The Jewish Channel's Week in Review. Palestinian textbooks aren't as inflammatory as many expect. Jewish music and Itzhak Perlman hit the new arena in Brooklyn. And more of the Jewish news that's changing your world right now in this episode of the Week in Review. Hello and welcome to the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. Palestinian school textbooks are not overwhelmingly populated with messages of hatred towards Jews or delegitimization of Israel, and Israeli textbooks have about as much messaging regarding Palestinians, according to the largest comparative study ever done on Israeli and Palestinian textbooks released on Monday. The $500,000 study was funded by the U.S. State Department and designed by Yale University psychiatry professor emeritus Bruce Wexler. The study examined more than 500 books and did close analysis on more than 150. It took nearly 4 years to complete. The overall finding was that, quote, dehumanizing and demonizing characterizations of the other were very rare in both Israeli and Palestinian books. The study stands as an empirical response to the many claims regarding the idea that schools in Palestine or Israel are, quote, teaching hate. Palestinian textbooks in particular have come under fire by many in the media in Washington and elsewhere, though many of those claims are based on books that existed before the Palestinian Authority developed its own curricula for the first time in 2007. Across all the hundreds of books, the study found, quote, extreme negative depictions in only 20 Israeli state books and 6 Palestinian books. Books in the ultra-Orthodox Israeli school system were treated separately in the study, and there were 7 extreme negative depictions there. The study declares that, quote, both the Israeli and the Palestinian communities should be commended for this important positive aspect of their books. That said, there is clearly still much work to be done in getting both sides to recognize each other, according to the study. For example, when it comes to maps published in textbooks, the study finds that 58% of Palestinian textbooks portray the entire area between the Mediterranean Seas and Jordan River as, quote, Palestine, making no mention of Israel. On the Israeli state school system side, 65% of the maps published in textbooks did not mention Palestine or the Palestinian Authority. That number jumped up to 95% for ultra-Orthodox textbooks. Israel's Ministry of Education denounced the study, declaring it, quote, biased, unprofessional, and significantly lacking in objectivity. Meantime, in another area seeking greater Israeli-Palestinian cooperation, newly confirmed Secretary of State John Kerry has already announced a planned trip to the Middle East next month and had phone conversations with both Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas. State Department spokesperson Victoria Nuland summarized the conversation with Netanyahu, saying, quote, the secretary underscored his personal commitment and that of President Obama to support Israeli security and to pursue a lasting peace between Israelis and Palestinians. Part of the larger plans for Kerry and some other newly appointed State Department officials is the issue of Iranian nuclear development and support for terror. On that front, for the first time, a terrorist attack that killed 5 Israelis and a local bus driver in Bulgaria last year has seen Bulgaria point the finger at Hezbollah. Bulgaria's foreign minister announced the results of a 6-month investigation, saying, quote, we have established that the 2 suspects were members of the militant wing of Hezbollah, adding, there is data showing the financing and connection between Hezbollah and the 2 suspects. Moving on, a story of emphasizing Jewish culture when a real estate magnate decided to open the doors of his famous new arena to a charitable concert featuring Jewish cantorial music and the iconic violinist Itzhak Perlman. Christian Needon reports.
The Brooklyn Nets have made their home at the Barclays Center a popular attraction during what has been a winning inaugural season. But NBA basketball isn't the only thing drawing crowds. The rafters here boast of the 8 Jay-Z concerts that opened the center this past fall, and TJC covered Barbra Streisand's 2-night return to her home borough in October.
Hello, Brooklyn! Hello!
But for Jewish music fans, February 28th at Barclays will be something special. World-class violinist Itzhak Perlman will take the stage with cantor Meyer Helfgott for a night of music that will fill the arena with songs in Yiddish.
Playing this kind of music in Brooklyn, the Jewish music in Brooklyn, for which, for the Jewish community, I think is very, very exciting and very, very meaningful to me. I always say that this is going to be a simcha. It's going to be a happening, and we might even do some things that would maybe make people want to dance.
Perlman recalled the idea for the concert followed a successful recording collaboration with Helfgott called Eternal Echoes, Songs and Dances for the Soul. He reached out to Barclays owner Bruce Ratner, whose daughter was a friend of Perlman's daughter.
Since our kids went to school together, I called him up since I knew that he had some connection to the Barclays Center, some, and I said, how would you feel, what do you think of that idea of taking the show to the Barclays Center?
And of course, I've known him for very many years, and he called me and I said, oh my goodness, I've wanted to do this since the day this place opened.
He was so enthusiastic, he says, I'm quote, I love it, I love it, I love it.
To help promote the concert, Perlman recently appeared at Barclays on Brooke Lopez Appreciation Night and played the national anthem on his violin. Ratner said Perlman fans should also be excited about Helfgott's performance.
When Itzhak said that Cantor Helfgott was going to perform with him, do the concert with him, I was very excited because for so many years I've listened to Chazanot, and here we go, we have this incredible Cantor, and I'm getting to be the promoter, producer of it, so I'm very lucky.
Perlman added that Helfgott's singing chops led him to convince the Cantor to record with him.
So when you hear Helfgott sing, the first thing, before he even says a word, just when he plays sings a tone, is what the kind of voice, the complexity of the voice, the core of his sound. And I like that, it does things to me.
And Ratner hopes for big turnout from Jewish music fans of all stripes on February 28th.
Whether you're a Reform or whether you're Orthodox or you're Hasidic, there will be something for you. And what a great thing for us all to come together. And it's in Brooklyn. Brooklyn, the home of Jews, in the United States.
Reporting from Brooklyn for the Jewish Channel, I'm Christian Needon.
What is the United States' approach to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and how do different presidential administrations respond to it? Some surprising answers to that question come from Elliot Abrams, the George W. Bush administration's, quote, Mideast guy, in a new book, Tested by Zion, the Bush administration and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. He recently stopped by TJC Studios for an interview, and here are the highlights. Elliot Abrams, thank you for joining us.
Very glad to be here.
So on this topic of the Bush administration's approach to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we've seen in recent weeks a very significant discussion of some of that policy in relation to Gaza and Hamas, and specifically this conflict that Israel just had with Hamas and Gaza. And a great many people on the right in Israel and the right in the American Jewish community are now referring to the disengagement as an absolute failure, and I feel that you probably have a different attitude on that.
I understand what they're saying, but I don't agree. First, I don't agree because having 7,500 Israelis in the middle of 1.5 million Palestinians in Gaza was never really going to work. I think that's what led Sharon to decide, as a general, this is hopeless. I mean, you tie up thousands and thousands of IDF personnel, and whatever you think the future is in terms of Israeli-Palestinian relations, there's not going to be a thriving Jewish community in Gaza. So as a general, I think he felt they should leave. The hardest question, I think, well, two questions. One, the Philadelphia Strip. That's the border between Gaza and Egypt, Sinai. The Israelis got out of that too, and that was a big debate because for a long time Sharon thought we shouldn't get out of there because that's how we can block
arms shipments.
Exactly, and this comes back, of course, if they ever think of withdrawing from any pieces of the West Bank. I think many Israelis would say yes, but never from the Jordan River or the Jordan Valley for exactly that reason, to make sure that terrorists' arms can't be delivered.
In the recent conflict, we saw all these 18-foot missiles being launched from Gaza.
Right.
And how else did they get to Gaza but through Egypt?
Exactly, exactly. The other question is whether Sharon reacted strongly enough when there were attacks from Gaza into Israel. And there were. Even right after the withdrawal in 2005, they get out August 2005, September, October. Now, Sharon has a stroke at the end of that period, but even in the months he was still prime minister, there were attacks, and there was rhetoric about how, one bomb, one missile, one mortar, bam. But the Israelis actually were much more restrained than that. And I think some Israelis at least would say, that was a mistake. If the immediate reaction had in fact been very much tougher, maybe the lesson would have been absorbed by Hamas.
And one of the things I think in general about your approach that would surprise a lot of people, that reading through your book as someone who, you put neocon in scare quotes, but someone who's been described as a neoconservative, someone who obviously was, a member of the Bush administration and the Reagan administration, someone who's more right-leaning, but yet throughout in the details of what you have to say about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, about settlements, there's a lot that just seems like a consistent United States government approach is going to be not for all settlements, but for some settlements, and that you aren't arguing for a maximalist position that we often see perhaps in American Jewish organizations or on the right in Israel politically.
I think that's right. I mean, part of this is just Israel has a democratically elected government, so we dealt with it. Most of the time Sharon, then some of it Olmert. And we weren't going to take a position in a sense far different from theirs. Bush's view was no daylight between Israel and the United States. But that meant, of course, where the Israeli prime minister was, you wanted to be close to him. Wherever he was, you wanted to be close to him.
Would he say he would use that phrase? Or
Bush used the phrase, no daylight. Now, it's interesting because President Obama in his first year created some daylight. And Malcolm Hoenlein, the president of the Conference of Presidents of major American Jewish organizations, this famous discussion said to the president, now there seems to be daylight, and the president has said, yeah, Bush had no daylight, but no progress either, which I think is completely wrong, completely unfair.
Right, as you would.
Yes, I mean, and I try to explain it in the book. But on settlements, I mean, the Bush administration and Sharon reached a kind of deal on settlements, which was what we call the settlement freeze. It wasn't exactly a settlement freeze, but what Sharon said was, we're not building any new settlements. We don't need new settlements. The expansion of settlements will be population, building up and in. You want to put in a new apartment house? Fine. But not more territory, not physical expansion. That was the deal we reached. And Sharon pretty much kept that deal. And I think it was a reasonable one, because you're not prejudicing the Palestinians if you put another house or apartment house in the middle of a settlement. And the Obama administration, I think, made a mistake in throwing that agreement out or making believe there was no agreement and going for a 100% settlement freeze and construction freeze in Jerusalem, which was the original Obama policy. And of course, they didn't get it. No Israeli prime minister is going to agree to that. So instead of having some agreed constraint, they had nothing. And after 4 years, there were no constraints on settlements, and there was no peace negotiation. And I just think it was a big mistake. But I do want to say this was an agreement with the government of Israel. I mean, we didn't ram it down their throats. We said to them, what's your settlement policy? Can we agree on a settlement policy? And we were able to do that because I think Sharon felt, looking at the settlements, they are where they need to be. Again, as a general, his sense was, particularly the big settlements, the settlement blocks, that's what he was really concentrating on.
You can see the full interview with Elliot Abrams under the weekly news category on the Jewish Channel On Demand on cable. That's all for this week. From all of us here at the Jewish Channel, be well. The Jewish Channel is available on cable. Time Warner Cable Channel 528, IO Optimum Channel 291, RCN Channel 268, Bright House Channel 330, Verizon Fios Channel 900, Cox Channel 1, Frontier Communications, and now on Comcast Cable in the on-demand menu under Premium Channels. For more information, visit tjctv.com.